Good evening, good morning, good overnight, wherever you are, Broncos country. It is officially training camp. Our first glimpse of your 2025 Denver Broncos. A time for snap judgments, jumps to conclusions, one could say. We're going to try to stay away from that here in the mellowness of the late night hours here. And some of you may be watching this in the morning or another time, but we're still going to try to steer clear of that. Fewer snap judgments, more broader perspective. But day one was still a pretty good day. Broncos seemed to emerge unscathed, although no Mike McGlinchey. Sean Payton says could be back Saturday, could be back Monday. We'll see. Did see Alex Palczewski out there in place of Mike McGlinchey. Alex Palczewski, to his credit, about as good a backup tackle as you can ask for. Pretty decent pass protector, which you like. And that brings us to the topic right there at the top of the show. New passing targets taking flight for Bo Nix. And of course, you saw the image there of Bo Nix and Sean Payton fist bumping before the start of practice on Friday. They seem pretty happy with things. Bo Nix getting those new passing targets involved. Completions to Pat Bryant, the rookie out of Illinois. Completions to Evan Engram. That combination is looking pretty effective so far. We actually did hear from Evan Engram after practice. We'll get to one soundbite from him later on. Evan Engram is a pretty loquacious guy. I think he's going to be what those of us in the media would call a go-to guy, as in you're going to go to him not just to talk about himself and his play, but even other guys and broader topics for perspective, because he's intelligent and he's got a pretty good understanding of how all the components of an offense and a team work together. So there's a lot to like with him. But he's got good chemistry with Bo Nix. Pat Bryant's developing good chemistry with Bo Nix. Some nice plays. Friday was a third down day. And third down really, I think, is going to be a place where Pat Bryant particularly shines as he gets out there going forward. That's going to be where he really steps up. Now, it wasn't all smiles and sunshine for Pat Bryant. There was a play where the ball went through his hands. It was actually nearly intercepted. It was one of the moments where it didn't go the way the offense wanted. Bo Nix rolling out. He's under duress. Nick Bonito's got backside pressure, and the ball could have been intercepted by Drew Sanders. Sanders has got a nice beat on it. And my angle, Sanders may have gotten a finger on it, perhaps not. Couldn't quite tell if he actually got contact with the ball. Either way, it's still a catchable ball for Pat Bryant, and it goes through his hands incomplete. So not a perfect day by Pat Bryant, but still a day in which he's making plays. Kind of similar to a day that he had in minicamp where he had a drop, but then he also had a touchdown. So we're seeing highs and we're also seeing some rookie moments. But the fact is, I apologize there. I kind of tipped my camera there. The fact that we see him getting those opportunities certainly shows a belief in Pat Bryant. It's actually an interesting conundrum here because while Pat Bryant is getting these opportunities, he's doing so as you're still seeing Devaughn Vele make plays. And on a day where Troy Franklin right there has the play of the day, of course, unfortunately, the Broncos camp is not one of those where we can shoot everything. There aren't very many of those camps anymore. But it's not one where we can sit there and get out the cameras. And it's not even one where anymore the team site can shoot everything. Just 3 years ago, even the team internal media was shooting everything. And you could count on some highlights getting out there from them. And then, of course, you'd have fans on the hill shooting very quietly and then putting things out there. This year, it's probably going to be pretty limited because, of course, there are only 800 fans rather than 2,000. So there's fewer chances for the video to get out there. So probably not going to see as much. So you have to trust my description on Troy Franklin going deep past Devin Key and Damari Mathis on a play where Jarrett Stidham drops back. Dondrea Tillman's got missile lock on him. Whips past Caleb Lohner. Dondrea Tillman on Caleb Lohner is not a fair fight. Dondrea Tillman has been eating tackles alive. You go back to minicamp and OTAs, and I mentioned at the top of the show Alex Palczewski, and y'all saw him last year filling in for Mike McGlinchey. You know that Palcho is a good young tackle who is probably a starting caliber young tackle in this league. And Dondrea Tillman is whipping past Palcho, and he's making some plays at Palcho's expense. So Tillman's no fluke, and certainly the way Jonathon Cooper was effusive in his praise of Tillman, that tells you that he's got the respect of the leader in that room. That says a great deal too. Anyhow, Lohner, it was trial by fire there, and Tillman's past him. Jarrett Stidham, who was one of my big things out of Friday's practice, as I put out there on my social media video, which you can also find on YouTube as well. Stidham has gotten better the last couple of years working in Sean Payton's system in practice. Stiddy, he's doing better under pressure than he did the last couple of years. He climbs the pocket perfectly out of the rush, steps up and uncorks a gorgeous pass. Franklin cutting across right side to left side, downfield head for the pylon, makes the grab. Could not be any better. It's chef's kiss on that baby. Touchdown. Just magnificent. So we got Pat Bryant making plays. You got Troy Franklin making plays. Devaughn Vele of those three has been the quietest, but he had a catch today as well. Also have to mention Cortland Sutton out there with the team. I know there's some out there saying, oh, he didn't do anything with the team. That's poppycock. He was out there in the team periods today. He had a catch from Bo Nix. It was on a play action. Bo was rolling to the right. He sees Cortland Sutton, Jaquan McMillan in coverage, and he finds Court there. Court's very engaged. He's has a lot of good spirit about him. I think some of the stuff that's floating out there about, Court contract, blah, 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 blah. I think it's a lot of hooey and poppycock. He looks pretty engaged and involved and ready to go to me. But what do I know? I'm just watching this thing. Denver football after dark here on a Friday night, wrapping up the first day of training camp. Appreciate you rolling with me here on this Friday night, wrapping up the first day of camp. Day 2 will be on Saturday. For those of you going out to Broncos training camp on Saturday, it's what they call the Back to Football Saturday. So I know they've got some events planned for the fans who will be there, the 800 or so lucky fans who do have tickets. Those who were there made quite a bit of noise. It was a good crowd, a spirited crowd. It's still a shame that it's only 800. I was really stunned with how many people were there early. I looked up at the stands at about 9:15, 9:18 or so, and it was pretty well packed, at least from my vantage looking across the fields. And I thought, wow, that's pretty impressive. Practice was still a good 45, 42 minutes away, and it was pretty well full. And the way practices are, the way they're structured, you've got the walkthrough period that usually chews up 10 to 10:30 a.m. and then individual period that goes 10 to 11 a.m. So the truth is, you're not seeing all that much for a while. That clip of Bo Nix there, that's actually before even the walkthrough period. That's at about 9:45 in the morning. So you go out to watch practice, you're not seeing a lot of real, actual football until the 11 o'clock hour, really. Like the sort of thing you're seeing even towards the end of the 10 o'clock hour is stuff like this. This is from OTAs earlier this offseason. So like an individual drill. That's Jaleel McLaughlin in an individual period. I'll shoot some more video coming up here in the next few days. Like I've actually my biggest task during these practices when we can shoot video or photos right now is actually shooting photos because we need to replenish our stock of photos. So when you see a lot of these video and photos right now that I occasionally roll in, we call them pattern interrupts on YouTube, and YouTube actually likes these things algorithmically. It's amazing how much these AI overlords are watching. And most of these that you see are actually from OTAs and minicamp. I've got to replenish the well a little bit. Is there anything on here that I shot today? Oh yeah. This is actually one I shot today. This is Christian Williams, an undrafted rookie. He was one of the guys that actually caught my eye today down on the third team. Had a couple of pressures, one of which would have been a sack. Christian Williams, an undrafted rookie out of Mizzou. One of 3 undrafted rookies who really flashed for me today. Williams and the other 2 were Joaquin Davis and Jerwan Newton. I feel like I've been saying Joaquin Davis an awful lot. Been talking about him, of course, since the Broncos signed their undrafted rookies because he jumped out. He had that marvelous workout at the HBCU Combine back in February. And just the numbers on him, 4.3, 640, 6'4", incredible vertical leap. He's got these things that you can't coach. So he's got all these measurables: length, vertical, speed. And he was all conference in the MEAC. So there's some on-field cred to Joaquin Davis, but obviously at the FCS level. So there's a level jump here. And North Carolina Central didn't really have a great passing game. I mean, he makes all conference despite relatively modest totals. He made the most of his opportunities, but his opportunities weren't great. You're seeing him get involved. What you're seeing, he's very good at using his length. What I'm noticing is a lot of his catches are plucks. Like he's using his reach, basically getting to balls that defenders can't. So he's taking advantage of his reach. He's taking advantage of his catch radius. That's key for him. Use the gifts that you have to win the matchups. Like, don't be afraid to use your wingspan. Don't be afraid to use your size. Like, it's your greatest gift here. It's like this reach and this body that you have, Joaquin Davis. And I like that about him. They takes advantage of this. The route running is raw. I mean, the interesting thing with Joaquin is, are you going to be able to pass him through to the practice squad? Because there's some that may look at him and, may try to pluck him. The only thing is he's a wide receiver, and wide receivers coming out of college, they're not in short supply. And the thing that may help the Broncos pass him through the practice squad is, this is a truism, just about every team has a rookie wide receiver they're developing that's kind of off the radar that they like. There is no shortage of quality receivers in general coming out of the college level, which is why it was so remarkable 2 years ago when the Broncos came out of training camp and they kept so few wide receivers, because they were so unhappy with the group that they had, because most teams have a surplus of wide receivers because they're just so many. Even a bad year draft wise for wide receiver talent has a bunch of guys. It's just the position that college football always seems to develop pretty well, that you can get a read on that. Receivers and running backs. Quarterbacks, tackles, although QBs seems to be getting a little bit better in recent years, as the skill set and the teaching seems to be upgrading, and the skill set seems to be crossing over a little bit better as offenses evolve. But tackles, guards can be rough, and it can take some time, especially tackles. But that's one thing that could help the Broncos hang on to Joaquin Davis, I think, is that every team has a receiver. But we're talking about two receivers, because the third undrafted receiver I want to talk about here is Devaughn Newton out of Toledo. Now, unlike Joaquin Davis, Devaughn Newton, pretty productive at Toledo, especially last season. Smaller, good underneath target, good route runner coming out. So the play he had today actually caught me a little off guard, given what his strengths are. But tremendous getting downfield, double coverage, and maybe not the best decision of a throw by Sam Ehlinger, but down the sideline, 35 yards, and Newton is sandwiched front and back. The ball does come down. It's right there. And Newton with this gorgeous over-the-shoulder catch with two defenders right there on him. The concentration required to make that catch. And this is a guy who has been catching everything thrown his way this week. So you've got a few receivers that the Broncos have in this undrafted crop. So far this week, the ones who are jumping out of these undrafted receivers, the ones who are jumping out are Juwan Newton and Joaquin Davis. It's early, but right now, what we're seeing, I always say, look for patterns, look for players who are stacking days. Joaquin Davis and Juwan Newton are stacking some days and making plays day after day. So we'll see if they can carry them forward. We'll see if they carry them forward when pads go on. That's also the big test, as Sean Payton noted. Pads go on Monday. That is when the rubber really starts to hit the road. But yeah. So those are a couple of new passing targets, although with Newton and Davis, we're talking about those guys. Most of their opportunities coming with Sam Ehlinger, whereas we're with the new targets, Evan Engram and Pat Bryant, we're talking about them getting their opportunities with Bo Nix, and also they're working with Jarrett Stidham. This is why you shouldn't probably get too caught up in first team, second team with guys moving around, because Sean Payton moves them around a lot. He likes to fiddle with groupings at this time. It's okay. So don't get too caught up in things right now. He's moving guys around. I mean, sometimes you'll look and see a rep and, Trent Sherfield's almost certainly not going to be a starter, but then you look and see Trent Sherfield breaking the huddle and running a route with, Cortland Sutton and Evan Engram out there too. I mean, that's just what you do at this time. It's okay. Get looks at a lot of different groupings, because, hey, injuries might happen and you might have to see that at some point. So anyhow, Denver football after dark here on a Friday night here. I'm not time to stop and check some comments. Mace after dark. Yep. In the dark. After dark. Will Evan Engram be a top tier tight end this year? Define top tier. I think he'll be better than what the Broncos have had, at least from a pass catching perspective. I know Cecil Lammey throws out 69 receptions. If Evan Engram has, say, 60 catches, 560 yards, and 4 touchdowns, that is actually a pretty good season, and certainly better than we've seen. I mean, I don't think we're talking about 1,000 yards from Evan Engram, and I'm not even sure we're talking about 800 yards from Evan Engram. That's fine. You just need him to be a part of the puzzle, something to get teams thinking, something to force them to spread their resources a little bit thinner and open things up for other targets. That, I think, is a key thing for Evan Engram and what you want him to bring. Michael Ronquillo, punter Jeremy Crawshaw looking like the missing link on the Broncos special teams. Well, it's nearly 25 minutes into this show, and I haven't talked about Jeremy Crawshaw. Oh my, Jeremy Crawshaw. So there's a lot to unpack here. By the way, I forgot to put the little bug up there. It's one period. It's punt period today. And the thing about this period is it comes on the heels of Sean Payton talking about Crawshaw on Wednesday. Okay, talking about him. I asked the question, and I asked him his thoughts on Crawshaw to date. At first, he's like, well, it's only one day. And I said, no, it's OTAs and mini camp, like just the whole big picture so far. Yeah, I just, I had to specify a bit that I wasn't just talking about this week. And he's like, okay, fine. And he said he's excited about him. He talked about how there's fireworks, but then he said, hey, every so often there's one that kind of shanks off to the right. He didn't use the word shank, but he kind of made the motion. Like we all knew what he was talking about, because that day in practice, Crawshaw had some titanic blasts, but then he had a couple that hit off his foot fat and just went off to the side. Like some were great, and then he had an ugly one or two. So then fast forward to today, first drill since then. So Sean Payton has basically publicly said, hey, Jeremy, I'm excited about you, but you've got to be more consistent. He was positive. I mean, if a head coach like Sean Payton is saying he's excited about a punter, the net on that comment is positive. Crawshaw should be feeling good. But in the midst of that praise, he put down a challenge to be more consistent. And it said that, and basically saying he expects that consistency to come. So here we are, Friday, punt period. It starts with the line of scrimmage at the 3-yard line and Crawshaw in the back of the south end zone. And this is where I've talked about wanting the punter who's got the driver in his bag just knock the ever-living crap out of the football and flip the field. And he punted it 70 yards with just a little under 5 seconds of hang time. That is exactly what I'm talking about. That thing just soared. That's what I was looking for. And then he follows that with more punts, long distance, great hang time. Now, there was one in there that had a sub-4 hang time, but it was off a high snap. It was actually a nice recovery by Crawshaw to get the snap and still get off a 50-yard punt on it. Good job by him. But here's where it goes to the next level. After punts for distance, Darren Rizzi moves it up. We're going on the other side of the 50. We're going into opponent territory. So now it's time for placement punts. Now it's time to get that thing inside the 10-yard line, another skill set. So we've gone from the driver, so to speak, to the wedges. And 3 punts in opponent territory. All of these punts are dropped inside the 10-yard line. All of them bounce either to the sideline or away from the goal line. In other words, they don't go into the end zone. He gets them to bounce perfectly. The coverage team is down there. They're all downed inside the 10-yard line. This was a punting clinic. And I mean, when you think about the Broncos special teams last year, you had Will Lutz, who on field goals had the most accurate season for a Broncos place kicker in 10 years since Connor Barth. You think about having the all-pro punt returner and Marvin Mims Jr., who now is poised to get more opportunities on kickoffs. And now you have a punter who appears to have all of the tools, who Darren Rizzi says is the most talented punter he's worked with, basically. Seems to have oodles of potential. Has gotten better every year since he came over to the States from Australia. The special teams, I know this sounds totally cliched and boring. Special teams could be extraordinarily special for this team this year. It was exciting to watch. Yeah, punting. I know I'm a punter geek. It was exciting for me to watch. It was fun. That was a fun period to see. And just seeing these things, I mean, just woo, it gets your attention. There will be some duds among the fireworks here and there. It won't always be like that. But today, Friday, that was an absolute punting clinic put on by Jeremy Crawshaw. Couldn't help but be impressed by that. So, just a lot of fun. One punt down inside the 3-yard line. Yep. The 3. Actually, let me just see here. I got my notebook right here, so if you'll excuse me. I'm old, so I have to put on my I'm not old, I'm middle-aged. Let's put it this way. I hope I'm middle-aged. I mean, as I sometimes say, I wasn't born yesterday, but I could die tomorrow. Boy, that got grim, didn't it? Anyhow, part of my, I have glasses, but yeah, I have my readers here, so hold it, please. And I've got my punting notes here. And yep, there it is. That was line of scrimmage 48. Yeah, down at the 4. That's where I've got it. Down at the 4, Michael, not the 3. That's where Bruce Hurdle of Fox 31 and I concluded. We concluded 4-yard line, 8-yard line, and 9-yard line as for where it was downed. So, yeah, that's what we're going with, and we're sticking to it. By the way, the hang times, just to kind of go through them on the punts. Aside from the 3.761 on the hangs on the high snap, and by the way, one of the ones that was down inside the 10 had a high snap as well. All of the other hang times were between 4.71 and 5.36. So pretty daggum good. It was a heck of a period. Heck of a period for Jeremy Crawshaw. Again, you know me. Love my special teams, love my punters. Get a feeling that mustache might make him a cult hero around these parts as well. Kind of like that. You have something like that, it makes you kind of a distinct character, right? So anyway, Detroit Mission Control, thanks for our daily punter update. The thing is, it's not necessarily daily because they don't do punter drills every day. Some days it'll be a punt return drill, and on punt returns, they'll do the jugs machine, because if they want to practice something specifically on punt returns, like if they want to practice a specific direction and make sure it's going in that direction, they'll get out the jugs and have it go there. So we don't necessarily see actual punts every day. Today was a punt/punt protection drill. And then some days they work only on kickoffs and field goals and not punts. So that's just the way that it sort of works on special teams. We don't always see punts in a practice, so it can be hit or miss if you go out there for training camp as to whether you're going to see punts or not. Bobby Hill. Bobby Whataburger. Sorry. By the way, Chuck Mangione, man, rest in peace. If we're thinking about King of the Hill. Feels so good, but it feels so bad to be talking about Chuck's passing, man. Anyway, imagine Crawshaw masters the coffin corner punt. Yeah. That's a good old school football term that we don't use often enough. But yeah, that's another thing. I want him to be able to do that. And that's another thing you say, use the distance, use his leg, because sometimes I want to be able to say, hey, you got a heck of a leg. We're back here at our own 40-yard line. Just tell him, hey, kick it left or kick it right and go for the corner and kick it out of bounds. And maybe you get a 50-yarder and that thing goes out of bounds at the 10-yard line. Boom. Instead of a touchback, they're at the 10 or at the 8 or whatever. Win. And they can't return it. This kid's really good. And of course, if it's a net of 50, it's a net of 52. Happy day. That's to me, that was the thing today. Like, this kid has the clubs in his bag. Love making the golf analogy. Maybe that's because so many kickers and punters I've covered, almost all of them are golfers. I don't know what it is like that, how almost all of them are obsessive golfers. I think maybe it has something to do with the fact that the mental part of both, there's like a lot of crossover in the Venn diagram in terms of the mental skills required for both disciplines, and kind of what has to go through your mind before a putt, before a drive, before a punt, before a kick, the things you have to consider before each. There's a lot to it. What you have to gauge. For both, it's a swing, even though it's a swing with a leg or a swing of the club. I think because of that, that's why. Maybe I'll ask Will Lutz that sometime during the season. Like, why are so many kickers scratch golfers? Because I think almost every kicker I've covered has been a proficient golfer. I mean, I think Jason Elam was, thinking of all the kickers most of the kickers I've been around. Jason Elam, I covered John Casey in Carolina. He golfed. McManus golfs, Yeah, that's something to think about. Broncos didn't have a punter like Jeremy Crawshaw here for a while. Maybe I was getting ahead of myself, but I allowed myself to think, man, it's been 37 years since the Broncos had an all-pro punter. That was Mike Horan back in 1988. Another punter with a mustache. Ooh. That was a brainwave right there. Mike Horan had a truly glorious mustache, a glorious 80s mustache. And now we fast forward to 2025 and look at Jeremy Crawshaw's mustache. A different style of mustache, but still unmistakable. Maybe that's a thing. Maybe to be a transcendent Broncos punter, you've got to have some whiskers. If he ends up being a great Broncos punter, that's going to be the thing. You got to have the stash working. Anyway, these are the things I think about late at night. Hunter, I know Bo worked with Tom House in the offseason. Any changes Bo made mechanically while throwing or his footwork? I haven't seen any. I know Sean Payton, when I asked about this, said that there really wasn't anything mechanical. It was more about kind of the routine and how he warmed up, throwing between days, that sort of thing. If I have a chance, I'm going to ask Bo about this tomorrow. Bo's supposed to have a press conference. That's if I'm there. There's a chance I may get pulled away for another interview, so I can't guarantee I'll ask that. And of course, these press conferences, it's shouting questions, so I can't guarantee I'll get to ask it, but it's something that if I do get the chance, I plan to ask Bo about Tom House specifically. So sit tight on that. I'm hoping to be able to peel back the layers on that and find out. So, Omari, Broncos better in all three phases. I do not disagree with this. They are better in all three phases, objectively. The one that maybe you weren't sure of was special teams. I think they were definitely better on offense with the additions they had. Definitely better on defense with Hufanga and Greenlaw, and Alex Singleton coming back, and Jahdae Barron once they really kind of figure out what his role is going to be. I think they're moving him around. As Pat Surtain alluded to, he's learning multiple different positions. Once they kind of figure him out and figure out his role, I think he's going to flourish. But yeah, on paper, we know what paper counts for. On paper, better in all three phases. But now, what I see in practice, they look better. The other thing, Omari, that I would say is when I watch them against each other in practice, it's even. You have the defense challenging the offense and vice versa. It's not one side dominating the other. It's each side doing it. I actually would say one thing that I like, and it hit me with a couple of plays that Stidham made. Of course, I alluded to the deep toss that I alluded to the deep toss that Stidham had to Franklin, of course, and I mentioned that Tillman beat Caleb Lohner. But there was another play where Stidham climbed the pocket and got past a Tillman pressure that could have potentially been a sack. And I'm thinking to myself, this is happening with the second team with Tillman. It's happening with the first team with Coop getting a nice rush. There was one play for Tillman where he did a spin move on Calvin Throckmorton. He had missile lock and Stiddy was able to get away. What you've got going on is you've got the defense doing something good and then the offense countering it with something good of its own. Right? So you've got the D stepping up and making a play and then the offense reacting to it. So, you got pressure coming or you've got, good coverage and the offense is solving it. So you've got something positive happening on both sides. You've got these units pushing each other. You've got them reacting to each other. You've got good pushing good to great and vice versa. And it's the cliche. I mean, I've heard this so often over the years around this team, especially when it was good. I heard it. This was said a lot 2015, 2014, 2016, back in those days. Iron sharpens iron. That's what's happening out here. That is something that encourages me, that I'll look at a play and the offense got the better of it, but the D did some good things here, or vice versa. The D got the better of it, but the offense did some good things to make this happen, to give itself a chance. That is incredibly encouraging. So, yeah, this is, it's early and I don't want to be too, I don't want to get everybody too hyped up. It's day one. Stuff could happen, but I do like this pushing back and forth on each other. I do like the fact that in these 3 days, and this is also true in minicamp and OTAs, I'm not seeing one side dominate another. Now, defense ahead of the offense, I will say that, yes, but what I saw today was the offense starting to kind of get a nice little push back here. And now and so we get kind of toward equality, which is really what you want. This is where the good stuff is starting to happen. It's the push back and forth. Today, of course, also was a third down day. And that's another positive sign when you see the offense making some plays in those clutch situations as well. And when you see Pat Bryant making those plays on third down, when you see Evan Engram making those plays on third down, that's another thing that excites you too. Hunter, we practiced incompletions today is ingrained in my head. You know, I'll actually, okay, I don't want to defend Pat Shurmur. They were it was to stop the clock. They were practicing kind of a spike thing there. But man, that soundbite. We were practicing incompletions to stop the clock. Oh, the 2021 season, the Pat Shurmur press conference soundbites. I mean, it was just a fountain. There was that. There was his spiel about a pencil, his anti-analytics sentiment, how, sometimes you don't score a lot of points in the first half. Yeah, no kidding. I watch this offense every week, Pat. I know exactly what's going on. Yeah, man. Oh, gosh, what a year. Pat Shurmur. Did all right with Shadur, though, eventually. Omari reminds me about Payton said about the OL. Now it's spreading. Yeah. I look back on the last 2 years and I think to myself, the smartest thing Payton did was build from the inside out. Get that O-line down pat first, and figure everything else out. The first 2 big offensive pickups were Mike McGlinchey and Ben Powers. And then building on what he inherited with Garrett Bowles and Quinn Miners. It's been very good that they've developed Luke Wattenberg. I do wonder what this team would have done if it had been in a better cap situation in regards to Russell Wilson and the dead money and all that. Because if they had not had the dead money, that huge figure that affected them and really forced them to stay out of most of the free agent market in 2024, if they didn't have that huge dead money charge, I suspect they would have probably brought Roy Cushenberry back in 24. That they didn't really want to lose him, but that was a hard choice they had to make because they like continuity. I mean, you hear them talk about continuity, cohesion. Oh, the entire unit's back. Well, I think if you really give them the truth serum, they would have loved to have had continuity in 2024 and have Cush there at the pivot. But they couldn't. They had to make a hard choice. And they were fortunate that Luke, to his credit, wherever Cush was, Luke was nearby, watching, learning, getting all that he could to make himself ready when his number got called. The result was, you go by ESPN analytics, last year's one of the best pass blocking centers in the game. Run blocking, that's the area he's got to improve. Pass blocking, excellent. It was the number 1 run blocking unit as an offensive line, according to ESPN analytics. Luke's got to get better. If you could take Alex Forsythe, the run blocker, and meld that with Luke Wattenberg, the pass blocker, you would have an insanely great center. unfortunately, it just doesn't work that way. So another interesting thing, we talk about all these guys in contract years. The one we don't really talk about is Luke Wattenberg. He's in a contract year. And all we hear about continuity, cohesion, bringing everybody back. But, Powers has multiple years left on his deal. McGlinchey has multiple years left on his deal. Quinn's just starting the second year of, Quinn's going into his contract, right? Because of course he signed the deal last summer, and Garrett Bowles is starting his new 4-year contract, and it's Luke that's got the expiring deal. And they drafted interior offensive linemen 3 straight years, of course. In day 3 of the draft, they drafted Luke Wattenberg, then Alex Forsythe, then Nick Gargiulo was on the practice squad last year. And then keep an eye on Clay Webb, who was a priority undrafted signee this year out of Jacksonville State. So I want to watch him a little bit more, especially when the pads go on. I was paying a little bit of attention to him today in the team period, the third team, but I want to study him a little bit more before I really kind of discuss him. And I want to watch him with pads before I really kind of dive into him more, discussing him in this format. So, but I yes, I am. If you're wondering, I am watching Clay Webb closely right now. I'm intrigued, is what I'll say about Clay Webb right now. We'll never see the QB carousel graphic again. That got old. Please don't say that. Please don't jinx it. I don't want to see that again. I mean, don't jinx that, because you're just begging for 2 quarterback injuries, and we have to see Sam Ehlinger start. Oh, no. If there are 2 quarterback injuries this year, I'm blaming you. I'm kidding. Detroit Mission Control, you're my way too early running back depth chart. Okay. So the depth chart may not look like the official depth chart. So I'll explain why. As I just adjust here, sometimes I sink. My chair is actually a Craftsman recliner here. It's very nice. So the depth chart may not reflect who the actual number 3 running back is. As I've said, Jaleel McLaughlin is kind of in a box unto himself. By the way, kind of a rough week for him. He's, had a ball kind of skip out of his hands today, or ball get knocked out of his hands, and he had a ball bounce off of his helmet a couple of days ago. So not the best of weeks, although he's had a couple of nice runs. Anyhow, so Tyler Bidet may actually be the 3rd running back, but he might be the 3rd running back and be on the practice squad at the start of the season. The roster gymnastics may come into play. Tyler Bidet is in his 4th year removed from the draft class, because he's 2022, and he's been put on the waiver wire coming out of camp the last 3 years. Thus, potentially a better shot of passing him through waivers and then getting him on the practice squad and then using elevations on him and then moving him up to the 53. Think of Bidet maybe a little bit like a little Jordan Humphrey. You might be able to play that game with him and use that roster spot on somebody else, like a Johnny Walker Jr. or a Clay Webb. These are guys that you were among your priority undrafted players that you may not be able to slip through. Could be a Caleb Lohner, for example, your 7th round pick. So in all practical purposes, your third team running back might be Tyler Bidet, but he might not be on your 53. Like, you might end up keeping Audric Estime on your 53, but he may not be your third running back. It might be Bidet. But you may look at Estime and say, well, he's closer to his draft class. We may not be able to slip him through. So that's why it may look a little bit different. But Bidet has trust. I'll say this for Audric Estime. I want to see what happens when the pads go on. That's where he can get his footing back. And he has done something this week better than he had last year. It's the cutback run, a nice, sharp cutback showing good vision and decisiveness to turn up field and get some yards. That's something he's doing better than he did last year. So if you're looking for a positive sign for Audric Estime, that's one. So I will admit, I always try to look for signs of progress and positivity, especially with young players. This is kind of going back to me. Some of my favorite weeks of the year are Senior Bowl, Shrine Bowl. I like seeing the young players, the young generation come in. I like watching their progress. I like to see them grow. It's something that renews me every year. I want to see them succeed. I want to see the new crop of players succeed every year. I want to see them reach their potential. I want to see Audric reach his potential. So when I see something like that, I get encouraged and I hope he can take steps beyond that. So maybe that means I'm too positive. I don't care. That's just kind of how I view it. I want to see guys grow. That's honestly, like, I get great joy out of watching the third team reps and watching players do something next week that they weren't doing this week. That's one of the most fun things for me about training camp. It's one of the things I enjoy most about this. I guess I just kind of view this differently than a lot of other people. Like, when I'm taking my notes, like, I pay as much attention to the Sam Ellinger third team reps as I do the Bo Nix first team reps. To me, they are just as important. My note taking, and that's why I probably spent maybe I spent too much time in my report today talking about the third unit, but it's important to me. So anyhow, Denver football after dark. Kind of lost my train of thought there. Here as we get towards or after midnight, which means it's Saturday. It may already be Saturday where you are. Well, if you're watching this on delay, it probably is Saturday. But probably a lot of you watching elsewhere around the globe, it is Saturday where you are. And that means it's training camp day 2. It's the day we're going to hear from Bo Nix. Maybe Mike McGlinchey comes back, but something tells me it'll probably be Monday. Monday is when the pads go on. Oh, man. Let's LFG. Yep. Let's go. Devin King. Philip Lindsay had an interesting take on running back room. Said Estime was slow to drills and pouting a bit. He's so young. Want team to see him take the next step. He is young. Like, he's 21 years old. And that's one thing that sometimes I think we have to be mindful of. I think back to, like, the late Ronnie Hillman, and he was young as well when he was here. It really just blows my mind that I have to say the late Ronnie Hillman. And it takes my breath away still to think about that. But that's something that comes into play. I mean, what were you like? You're older. What were you like when you were 21? When I was 21, I didn't know crap. Of course I might react like that. Heck, I'm decades old. I'm decades older than that. I might react like that. So, yeah. The thing is, though, the train will leave the station without you if you don't figure it out. Because with Audric Estime, the other thing is there are 2 second-year running backs because it's him and Blake Watson. And there's no guarantee that they keep both. And if Audric Estime does not figure it out and doesn't show enough progress, I mean, like I said, I see the sign. I see that he's doing one thing better than he has been doing, which again, you kind of cling to. But the other thing also is if he puts the ball on the ground, unfortunately, that overshadows everything else. If he fumbles, it puts him back to square one. And unfortunately, if he fumbles, that probably shatters it. Anything that could be done to build his confidence. If that ball's on the ground, then it might be curtains for him. And then the only running back from last year's rookie class that they keep might be Blake Watson. There may actually only be room for one second-year running back of Estime or Blake Watson. Different skill sets. Estime is the power back. Blake Watson is the pass catching back. Considering that they have Jaleel McLaughlin as the gadget type of back who almost certainly has a role somewhere in this mix, I think Estime's skill set is probably more of what they need, but if he can't hang on to the ball, if he can't figure things out, then you gotta keep the guy. The other possibility that comes into play, I know it's something that Cecil mentions, is so many running backs in this year's draft class that if one hits the waiver wire and it happens to be somebody that you like, do you go ahead and make a claim? For example, Kansas City picked Brashard Smith from SMU in the 7th round. We know the Chiefs roster is stacked. We know the Broncos met with Brashard Smith at the combine. And if the Chiefs happen to cut him, do you go ahead and put a claim in? I mean, that's the sort of thing it could come up to. That this running back class was so deep and so many, and there may not be room for all of them on everybody's roster, and somebody pops up on the waiver wire at the cut to 53. And that's the sort of thing that could change it. Remember, you've got Jordan Devaughn rejoining the Broncos franchise from the Eagles. And why that is significant is Philly works that waiver wire after cuts. And Jordan Devaughn is running pro scouting, and he's going to scour that wire, and he's going to have some recommendations on guys to bring in after the cut. So that's another thing to keep your eye on after the cut to 53, is that having someone like Devaughn in there means I think the Broncos are a little more likely this year than in previous years to make a claim on someone else's waiver wire cuts. That's another thing to keep in mind as well. When can we see a George Payton extension? Because his contract is almost up too. Yeah, I actually had a conversation about this about a month ago, that very quietly, George's contract is almost up. This is year 5. of his 6-year deal. So George was out there today. He was watching practice with Greg Penner. I had a chance to say hello to both of them. GP and GP watching practice together. Yes. That's something. That's some food for thought right there. Certainly George Payton has earned that contract extension. But it's very interesting now that his staff looks so different because so many have departed. So many have moved up. It's the way of things. When you do a good job, when your team succeeds, people want a piece of it. It's to George Payton's credit that a lot of other clubs want a piece of what the Broncos are doing, and thus you've seen the poaching, not just Darren Mucci, of course, but others. But his staff looks a lot different now. You've had some promotions and you've had some new people come in. Like the aforementioned Jordan Dizon, for example, coming back to the Broncos organization. He worked, of course, he was here, of course, when John Elway was here. But yeah, it's time to extend George too, I would say. Big E Bronco. That's why I've been saying tight end too, not on the roster yet. Ooh, and Big E, you say that because like with running back, it was a good tight end class as well. So food for thought. Although I think they do want to see just how far down the road Caleb Lohner goes. And I think in general, this year is sort of about they've got the tight ends they have Adam Troutman, they have Nate Adkins. And I think they want to get a nice look at Caleb Lohner on the practice field as well and kind of see where he goes. So Denver football after dark. We've kind of meandered over an hour. Michael, thanks, Andrew Mason. Appreciate you, Michael. Thanks for being here. 2 a.m. Big E Broncos. So you must be Big E on the Big East Coast in Eastern, or maybe not on the East Coast, but in Eastern Daylight Time, because you may not be on the East Coast. You might be in Kentucky or Indiana or Tennessee or Eastern Tennessee or something. So I have to take my own bias out of it because I think of Eastern Time as East Coast because I was born in Virginia, right there in the Mid-Atlantic. So again, that's sort of my bias to the original 53. Devin King, more of the same national media this year. May not sold on Bo. I'm loading up screenshots to keep my receipts for comments after the season again. Yeah, please do that. Send some of them to me. I'd appreciate that because there's a lot of crap out there. Bo looks all right to me. Bo looks all right to me. Appreciate all you guys being here. Everyone here being here on this Friday night into the wee small hours of Saturday morning. Unfortunately, I have to go to bed because my alarm will go off at 7:40 Mountain Time, and I have to skedaddle over to Broncos practice, cover day 2 of training camp, back to football Saturday. Bo Nix will be talking after practice. If all goes well, hopefully I'll get a chance to chat with at least one player off to the side after practice, and so we'll have some clips from that. Cecil Lammey and I will be live on Saturday afternoon. We will do a bonus weekend orange and blue today. I don't know when yet. It'll probably be earlier than 5 p.m. Mountain Time. A couple of reasons for that. Just because it's Saturday, the schedule is a little different. Don't have as much to do in the afternoon on Saturday, content-wise. I will have a story at some point. I'll probably be Saturday night hoping to be actually down in the Springs at the Colorado Springs Switchbacks FC soccer game. So if you're down there at Widener Field and see me, say hi. I won't bite. If you see me walking around there in a t-shirt and a hat, don't be afraid to say hello. And then be back here for another Denver football after dark, probably about the same time, 10:30, 10:45 Saturday night, to break down everything from day 2 of training camp and look ahead to the start of the following week. Look ahead to the Broncos putting pads on Monday. We really get into the meat of camp when the pads go on. And also, this coming week, this is the arduous week. It's 6 consecutive days of practice. It's the longest stretch of consecutive days of practice, believe it or not, because the following week, the Broncos go Monday, Tuesday. They're off when they fly to the San Francisco Bay Area, and they practice with the 49ers on Thursday. Then they're off again. They have the preseason game. And they come back, and they're off on Monday, and they go Tuesday, and I think they go Wednesday, and then they have a practice with the Cardinals on Thursday, and then they're off on Friday. So next week, that's the grind week. That's where you really get into the closest thing to the dog days of camp that they used to have back in the day. You get to like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. That's where you start getting tired of each other. That's when we start seeing things get a little chippy. It's always an interesting time. So it'll be a fascinating week. It always is. Appreciate you hanging with me here on this edition of Denver Football After Dark for Friday night into Saturday morning here in the Mile High City. Appreciate you hanging with me. If you like this, feel free to comment, tell your friends. If you don't like it, well, keep it to yourself. Sorry. I can't help it. Anyway. If you enjoy it, though, like, comment, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you never miss a vid, including my post-practice wraps, which I will have one of them up on Saturday afternoon, of course, detailing all that went on, probably just kind of like Friday, the 3 big things that stood out to me from Saturday's practice. Chat with you again tomorrow night and also tomorrow afternoon, or actually I should say Saturday afternoon, not tomorrow, because it's today and tomorrow never comes. It's always today. So I'll chat with you Saturday afternoon on Orange and Blue Today with my good friend Cecil Lammey joining me, and again Saturday night for another edition of Denver Football After Dark. Until next time, take care. Thanks for watching, and make sure that you have yourself a great night. Bye for now.